What's going on, everybody? This is live stream 44, and the topic of the hour is the midterms, and we're going to discuss that. But we're also going to discuss, because we have some late breaking news here, some Russian missiles apparently hit Poland. Don't know if it was deliberate or on accident, and apparently killed some Polish citizens. So we're going to kick that around. Not much is known about that situation, so we'll start this off talking about that, and then we will roll into midterm discussions. So going around the horn, introducing the panel tonight, we got Mike with Small Team Supply. Be sure to check out his YouTube channel. He's an instructor at the One Shepherd Leadership Institute. And if you guys see my videos over the AR RPK uppers, he's the man, the myth, the legend. He's the one that builds them in his dungeon there. So, Mike, thanks for jumping on tonight, brother.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
All right, no stranger to live streams. We got Les with Pegasus Test. That is his YouTube channel. Be sure to go check him out. Les is an expert in logistics. He has his own logistics company. He was a Marine, served in the early 90s. He's a veteran of the Gulf War. He also has his own tactical training company called Polaris Tactics and Simulations Division. He's the company commander of Bravo Company, One Shepherd. Les, thanks for jumping on tonight.
Glad to be here, Brent.
All right, next we got my right-hand man, Bruce. Bruce at Camp Armament. That is his YouTube channel. Be sure to check him out. Bruce was an aircraft mechanic. He was an armorer back in the day, and always brings that excellent civilian perspective to the chat. So, Bruce, thanks for jumping on tonight, brother.
Got my buddy Evan with me. Let's go.
All right, next we got the good doc, Dr. Christopher Larson. That is also his YouTube channel, Christopher Larson. Check him out. He's an accomplished author. He was a U.S. Army veteran, served in Korea in the 80s, and he's the original founder of the One Shepherd Leadership Institute, going strong for 40 years plus now. And we're looking forward to a Charlie company getting started sooner or later. And Doc always brings an excellent educational perspective to the chat. Doc, thanks for jumping on tonight.
Thanks for having me.
All right, and last but not least, my good buddy Chad. Chad and I served together in Bravo Company, 1st Battalion, 23rd Marines. Went to Afghanistan, hooked and jabbed in Helmand Province in 2010 time frame. Chad is also a veteran of the initial invasion in 2003 Iraq invasion. He also went back in 2004, fought and hooked a jab in the Battle of Fallujah with 1st LAR. And Chad is studying to get his military doctorate's degree. And he's just a wealth of knowledge, and always appreciate him jumping on. Chad, thanks for coming here tonight.
Let's go, Brandon.
All right, guys. Well, that is our panel tonight. So let's open up the floor here. Actually, no, I'm sorry. Let's kick it over to Les. Sorry, it's been a minute. I think we've gone a month without having one of these live streams. Let's kick it over to Les and talk about these Russian missiles allegedly hitting Poland. So, Les, you got the con, man.
All right. Well, what we know so far is it was just a few clicks over the border, seems to hit an agricultural area, and there seems to be some conjecture whether they were Russian missiles, whether they were Ukrainian missiles trying to shoot down the Russian missiles. Kind of nobody knows. It's still foggy yet, fog of war, all that good shit. Right now, I'm going to put my plot down on it was just an overshoot and not a deliberate attack, because if it was a deliberate attack, it kind of fizzled really bad. But right now, we don't know much, and it's a developing situation, so I'm not going to make more comment than that.
Yeah, and for the guys that don't know, Poland is on the border of the Ukraine, so it's not like a couple of countries over or something like that. It's right on the border.
I think it's a good possibility that those missile or one missile might have been hit by some sort of anti-aircraft defensive fire and shot off course, or debris, from the explosion of that missile flew over into Poland. I mean, who knows? There's really nothing known right now about this. So it'll be interesting to see how this all develops.
Yeah, it's one of the things I was trying to find out was it because some of them are saying missiles plural and others are saying missiles singular. And if it's a missile singular, I'm going to agree with Les on this one and say, I don't know whose side it was, but it's probably an errant missile in some form or another. Either it was aimed at something else and, a defensive system knocked it off course, or it was chasing something else, and it just didn't find its mark. Either way, the whole entire war is tragic, and it shows you that when you're standing right beside some farmer, because they have confirmed 2 have died from this attack. That is confirmed. And it just shows you just how hazardous it is. I mean, these people were not military, they're not, they're not involved in that political struggle or conflict. They're going about their daily life, and a missile falls from the sky and kills them. I mean, that's pretty tragic.
Yeah, I tend to agree with what everyone else has said. I know our military has come out with a spokesman. I don't know his name, but he obviously had a whole bunch of stripes and a lot of shiny stuff on his uniform. And he basically said, "Look," he said, we're not going to say anything at this point." What he told us was very little. They have reports that this incident occurred, and they're going to hold their cards close to their chest. That tells me pretty quickly that it doesn't look like that they're feeling that it was intentional by Russia. Russia's already came out and denied it. If they wanted to intentionally strike Poland, I'm not exactly sure why they would target 2 farmers on the border. And to Doc's point of it being 1 missile or 2 missiles, the initial reports were 2, but that would also make sense if you had an anti-air missile striking a Russian missile and taking it down, and you get 2 different components landing on the ground nearby. We know that Russia launched today, I think, over 90 missiles into Ukraine all across the country. Ukraine is claiming to have intercepted over 60 of those. 15 of those hit their targets, and it looked like they were primarily targeting secondary electrical facilities, or I should say, power facilities. That's been a routine target of Russia to try to put Ukraine into a blackout situation. So to me, that all jives. We know that Russia's missiles have not been that accurate, particularly the closer that they get to Poland, the farther they get from their targets. They're having a hard time. They have been targeting cities across the western Ukrainian border, and they never seem to hit their targets. They always seem to hit a shopping mall or a railway station, and they're causing a lot of civilian casualties rather than military targets or infrastructure targets that you would think that they would want to hit. And it's just because I think they're not that accurate when they get that far away. So to me, I'm going to withhold my judgment. I may come back next time and have a completely different position, but until there's been a little more investigation done, and it just seems like to me that the initial feel of this whole thing was that they weren't intentionally trying to target those 2 farmers, out on the farm on the border of Poland and Ukraine, and that something just went awry. Not to say that they shouldn't be held accountable for that, and I think that there will be some accountability, because this is all that's going to be on the news tonight. The whole world is watching, but I like to call a spade when I see it, and it looks like that's what we're looking at.
Yeah, I'm with you, Bruce. I don't think we have much information to act on here. I mean, for the most part, during the entirety of this conflict, Putin has stayed out of Western Ukraine. This wasn't a strategic target, as you mentioned. There were farmers on the border. That's not a strategic target by any means. I think the response to this will be affected by Russia's response. If this remains an isolated incident, I don't think much will come of this. But if this becomes a habit, Putin might have watched out.
Well, I guess because of our limited information on this, we can put that to ease and move on to our main topic, which is the midterm elections. So, I mean, I don't know about y'all. It wasn't what I was expecting. I don't think a lot of people were expecting that. And to me, it's kind of reminiscent of, Trump's midterms, where he lost the Senate, Congress, and he kept the Senate, but now it's kind of flip-flop. But I would argue that it was kind of different circumstances back then. Trump had a very strong economy. And it seemed like a lot was going right for Trump at that particular time during those midterms, and he still lost Congress. Here, we got a real shitty economy. It seems like a lot's going wrong. Freaking a war essentially was lost. And, Biden keeps the Senate and loses Congress.
So why did you? Let me jump right in. I mean, let's share our biases. Let's make sure we're being transparent here, in as much as we can be. And I don't say bias in a bad way. Let me back up for just a second and say, I immediately am suspicious if anybody says, "Oh, I'm balanced and unbiased." Oh, my ass, you are. You're not human. But you said right away, Brent. I don't think this went the way anyone thought it was going to go. I think I know what you mean by that, but certainly for the audience and for our own conversation, can you explain how did you think it was going to go?
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm 100% biased. I am absolutely 100% conservative. And I did not vote for Beto. Never have. Neither of the 3 times he's ran for governor in the state of Texas. All right. So I would think that the vast majority of my audience, given the topics that I put out at hand, are more conservative leaning. So the circles that I tend to run with and follow are more conservative. And I think the vast majority of at least the conservative side was expecting bigger gains on the Republican side of the House. But I would also say that I know for a fact that the other side, the left wing of the political spectrum, was anticipating some losses as well. So, I mean, I watched few of their other side. I know Bruce always talks about how he likes to watch, MSNBC and CNN and stuff just to see what the other side is saying. And, I tap into that as well occasionally. And, I was seeing some stuff that looked to me like they were expecting some loss. So
what if I said that now I wouldn't have said this for the last election, the election that saw Biden rise to his tyrannical power. But I would say, which, right there, I'm showing that I am very adamantly, for me, the only thing worse than a Republican dominated federal government is a Democrat dominated federal government. I am no longer to the point where I've years ago, I think I gave up saying, "Oh, I'm not Republican or I'm not Democrat." No, I'm anti-Republican and I'm anti-Democrat. I'm very, very much anti against these two political parties and their platforms. But I was surprised 2 years ago at the election, the disinformation, the intentional scrambling of data, and then the news media being the self-elected, we say who wins, and it's not who counts the ballots anymore. That old adage of it does not matter who casts the votes, it only matters who casts the ballots. Oh, hey, listen, no. What really matters in America is which media news source says who won. Remember that whole thing about Dewey wins, and where Truman had actually won the election, and they're holding the newspaper that say Dewey wins. And of course, this is a gaffe. This is still studied to this day in news media as a gaffe. Well, I shouldn't say that. Today, I think it's studied in journalism as the way forward, that Dewey should have won that day, not because he had the most election, but it is because the news media says who does and does not win elections. So given all the corruption that we saw 2 years ago, and the news media rushing in to say, this is who won, and the rest of the country just going, I guess we can't do anything. Why would you expect it to have gone any different? And I'll point out it hasn't gone any different. It's gone exactly that pattern. Why would you expect it to be different?
I was just going to say, and I would just say some expectations from the last election, the 2020, right? We saw, legislators changing rules on voting, and because of COVID at the last possible minute, or not even legislators. We saw, I believe it was like governors changing rules when that's the legislator's job. So you saw a lot of shadiness involved with that. I would have expected, at least in the Republican states, like in Florida, for instance, they cleaned that up, right? And what do we see? What do we see in Florida? Oh, shocking. The whole state practically goes red. But we saw all this shit. And if you think back to the last election, we waited for days for the same 2 states. So you would have thought that there would have been some, fine tuning to the election process after that. But, incompetence of government.
Well, wait a minute. Okay. Brent, honest question. Not talking about you, the average American citizen. This isn't a discussion on this. At least in my estimate, this is a discussion of the powers that be, specifically the political parties and everything else. If you could imagine a flipped situation, so distant future, the blue losing hand over fist everywhere, would you not imagine that the Republicans pull the same stunts that the Democrats are now? I guess this is my point. It doesn't benefit the Republicans to stop the Democrats from their corruption. All that has done is said, okay, this is the new normal, and now the Republicans only have to out-corrupt the Democrats. Well, we laugh. Here's what I'm going to ask. Anywhere around the room, anybody can answer this. What happens to your ballot after you vote? Because I don't know. I've been told in theory what happens, but I've never, ever witnessed this.
Well, I'll go with what Mark Twain said. Voting was really important. They wouldn't let us do it.
Well, that's a good point, Les. And let's face it, most Americans don't vote, right?
Yeah, but Bruce, you're right and you're wrong there. As of all the eligible voting people, you're absolutely right. But compared to most nations, we vote a lot more than people. And that's kind of what scares me. On this channel a couple times, we've talked about various forms of civil war. I don't think that's the worst outcome. I think the worst outcome is apathy. And we end up like the damn Europeans where double-digit voter turnout's a big deal.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. And I kind of got a lot to say here. I'm not going to take up too much time, but to some of your points, I think that I've said this to a lot of kind of average people. I guess we call them uninformed voters or uninformed people who listen to mainstream media and they think that narrative is reality. And then I bring something else, another point in, and they're like, well, I didn't know about that. And I'm like, so you have to ask yourself, why is your source for news lying to you? And I think we need to turn that on ourselves now. Because like Brent said, I follow MSNBC, CNN. I look at Yahoo News, which is what I kind of consider like the average uninformed voter would go to. Your kind of typical house mom probably watches. But then also Fox, right? Also Breitbart. Well, every one of those talked about red wave, red wave, red wave. So now we have to ask ourselves, if we're getting our information from some of the conservative news outlets, AM radio as well. Every morning I'm listening to AM radio. Why did they lie to us about that? Why did they all share the same narrative saying red wave, red wave, red wave when it wasn't even close? What was the purpose of that? I will tell you, I'll tell you what the outcome is. The outcome is this. How many conservative Republican voters that would have voted for Republican candidates said, there's a red wave, I don't need to vote today? He sat back comfortable thinking every channel from MSNBC to Drudge to AM radio is telling us there's a red wave. I really don't need to go out in the cold today and vote. I really don't need to mail my vote in. How many of those actually didn't vote because they were convinced by every media outlet that there is that there was going to be a red wave? That's a question that we have to ask ourselves. And I think that we may all know the answer. I can sometimes be a conspiracy theorist, but I like to just follow the money, right? Everybody says follow the money. I'm saying, follow the votes. Like, what was the point of selling everyone on red wave? What was the benefit? What was the reaction to that? Did that pump up people to go and vote and just run the score up? Or did that tell people, look, we're going to win this game anyway, why even watch it? And that's my question, and that's going to be my point.
Well, So I'm going to go a different direction with this. I'm by nature a pessimist, and I never bought into the hype of a red wave, period. I wasn't very passionate about any of the candidates outside the Florida governor, the Texas governor, because I hate Beto, and maybe the recent disappointment we learned about in Arizona. You know, I liked Carrie Lake. She was a ball buster. I'm going to do a lot of bashing on the Republicans this stream. I think the problem with the Republican Party is its inability of its membership to promote its values. That is, it's supposed to be, at least on paper, the party of limited government. Now, that, of course, is debatable. Doc, you may have something to say on that, but I digress. So what happened with the midterms? Where was the red wave? Well, you can't effectively communicate your values when you run campaigns based on the simple premise that, hey, we're just not those guys. And that's all we heard. That's what happened. You know, what we should have seen was political ad after political ad on the attempts by the Marxist Democrats to sexualize our kids. That's a winning issue. And I'm going to have a lot to say on that issue. That's an issue that won the gubernatorial election in Virginia. Okay. The issue isn't the stolen election of 2020, which we did see a lot of. That's not a winning issue. There's a famous quote out there. There are two political parties in America, the stupid party and the dangerous party. The Republican Party is the stupid party. Okay. Bottom line, conservatives suck at messaging. And I think we can take away from our opponents a better way to win political fights. You know, I'm probably going to have some controversial opinions on here, particularly on Trump. So looking forward to the conversation.
No,
Chad, I'll
Um,
say this real quick. Chad, I'm not so sure you're going to have a lot of controversial comments on here because I think that Doc might have said it best when he said that, you know, he doesn't want Republicans in full control of anything, and he doesn't want Democrats in control of anything. And once Les makes his point, maybe Doc, you can come back and answer this, because that was actually one of the discussions that was pretty big on CNN over the last week before the election, was these split ticket votes where people are voting for a conservative or a Republican for governor, but they're voting for Democrats for senator. You know, they're splitting them up for Congress, right? Because they don't want any one party in control of the government either. They just want the government to freaking stop. Just stop doing what you're doing. Just quit. And the only way to do that is to have a mixed government where nothing gets done. Okay, fair enough. I can respect that. I get it, right? But I just think that that's something worth thinking about. That's something worth focusing on, and it's something worth discussing. So let me hand it off to Les. I know you had a different thought, and maybe Doc, you can come back and tell us a little bit more about what you think about that.
No, I think really what the Republicans did wrong here, they didn't do anything wrong. They did their usual thing. They snatched defeat from the jaws of victory. And, you know, they spent $9 million in Alaska on a race between two Republicans, a race they should have spent $0 on because they were going to win no matter what, you know. And then you look at, like, down in Arizona, they spent less than $250,000 on their guy down there. You know, they spent nothing in New Hampshire, and they damn near won the state. You know, there was just misplaced priorities. You know, if you want to buy into the whole uniparty concept, was awful convenient for frickin' Lindsey Graham to come out and bring up the abortion. Oh, we'll have a nationwide abortion law, blah, 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 after they had already won in the Supreme Court, you know, and the Dems overplayed their hand. They did that stupid shit. I think the results come from the fact that's the result the Republican leadership wanted. I won't say the party. I'll say the leadership wanted, because, God damn it, Mitch McConnell's been there too fucking long. He needs to go home, retire. I'd say bounce his grandkids on his knees, but probably his great-grandkids, because he's so damn old and he's been there so damn long.
Yeah, I think what you say got a lot of validity, Les, for sure. I mean, like you're saying, they were putting funding in. I think they were more worried about Republican infighting than they were actually getting Republicans into governance. The other thing is that I read an interesting article by Jeff Tucker not too long ago, and he was talking again about the administrative state and things of that nature, where, you know, that's the main target. If we actually want to get our country back. We need to go after these guys that are career government employees. They're never elected, and they wield way more power than the guys that are even elected. You go look at the COVID thing. Who was running the country during COVID? It wasn't the president, because we had the exact same outcome with Trump, and we had the same outcome with Biden in regards to that. Yeah, he got us into wars and made us lose some and etc. But as far as a lot of the overarching tyranny on Americans, that happened through the administrative state, not necessarily elected official.
Hey, real quick, I want to go back to something you were talking about, Bruce. Here's the problem with splitting the ballot, though. We can't just look at the government anymore. It's also about the institutions outside the government. We have a media that is controlled by the left. We have big tech that is controlled by the left. And we have academia, which is controlled by the left. So if you're splitting the ballot out of concerns for a power imbalance, you need to look at the big picture.
Well, I'll let Doc speak to that, because this is something that he brought up, and it made me think of all those voters that are doing just that. So I'll let Doc speak to that.
Well, here's what perplexes me. One of many things that perplex me is the fact that so many people that identify as a conservative feel that they need to identify with the Republican Party, when the Republican Party is not at all conservative. It is not small government. It is big government. It is not small spending. It is big spending. It is not anti-war. It is pro-war. It is not anti-corporation. It is pro-corporation. It is not anti-tax. It is pro-tax. Everything the Republican Party wants is, Bolshevik. Guys. So yes, the Democrats out Bolshevik the Republicans. I get it. They do. The Democrats have bought into a woke line of Marxism that, outpaces the Republicans' ability to keep up. But the Republicans are desperately trying to keep up and be the bigger Bolshevik Marxist group. If you're a conservative, you have no business ever identifying with the Republicans. Not for exception. If we're going to be honest, back to Abraham Lincoln, then we're going to say, wow, the Republican Party is kind of anti-constitutional from its very get-go, isn't it? So here's the thing. Those institutions we've rattled off, and namely education, but also big tech and on and on and on. Your religious institutions have overwhelmingly been swayed by Marxists and Marxism. Guys, if you're a conservative, look to change those things. When we say you can change the ground you stand on, that's in your house, in your neighborhood, maybe in your larger community. That's where you need to start the change. That's certainly where the Marxists started their change back in the 1960s. It's where we need to start our change today. The continued insistence that the Marxist Republicans are going to save you, well, they're not. And oh, by the way, your vote doesn't matter anyway. Your vote isn't counted. Your vote is not counted. If these last two elections haven't taught you that, then you're not paying attention.
Is that what you wanted, Bruce?
Yeah, sorry, I was replying to a comment. I'll just say it here, guys. Any cussing the least amount, YouTube censors you out. So I'm going through trying to approve you, but no matter how legit it is, and we're all right there with you, they're going to block your message, and nobody's going to see it unless we go in and manually punch it in. So great question by Mr. A. How do we create an alternative? What does that look like? Can there be a third party? Yes, and yes. And his name was Perot, and it got us the assault weapons ban of 1993. So let that sink in, because I was that idiot that did that.
We don't even need a third party anymore. What we need is zero parties, first off. But we don't even need that, because the blues and the reds are so greedily fighting over it, that they don't even want a majority anymore. They want to hold each other in this. So just let that happen. Turn your back on it. Walk away from it. Stop thinking, well, if I could just get a political party into that corruption, it would somehow magically be less corrupt. No, you would actually be adding to the corruption. Look, stop voting. Or just, you don't need to anymore. You don't need to anymore. The news media establishes the winner before the votes ever even happen. We've already caught this. Did you guys catch that? Like 2 weeks before the election, and there was election results showing the Democrat winning, and it was down in the lower corner of this news. They weren't even aware that it was up. They're like, oh, that was our technical rehearsal. I'm like, no, dude. You were already telling us who you are planning on winning 14 days before the election happened. 14 days they were telling us who was winning the election. I think it was Arizona. Either way, doesn't matter. Stop voting. Start paying attention to what's going on in your church, in your school, in your community, in your neighborhood. This is where, look, blue and red want money, and you have the money. When you start paying attention to a local level and there's enough people saying, look, this is our values, they'll have to eventually bend to that. That's how you do this.
No, it's true. If you want liberty, the only way forward is to create your own parallel processes, create your own systems so you're not reliant. Like, it's hard to unplug yourself 100%, right? I mean, I'm still going to use US dollars, right? But at the end of the day, the more systems I can get off of and create my own systems, the more liberty I'll have.
Bueller. hey, I'm gonna disagree with you. I'm gonna disagree with you, Doc. You guys need to vote. God damn it. You need to vote. What we need to do is we need to get ahead of the left, because the left has perfected this art of this early voting / mail-in ballot, freaking 2-3 weeks ahead of an election. They've mastered that. We on the right have, traditionally showed up on day of the election, and it's not going to work. It's not going to work. We're starting way behind and we can't even catch up. So what we need to do is we need to fight fire with fire. We got to organize, and goddamn it, if ballot harvesting is legal in your state, well, goddamn it, get to them old folks' homes, start ballot harvesting. If it's legal, do it. That's what the enemy's doing.
It doesn't matter who casts the ballots. What matters is who counts. What you mean is, here's how you win an election. You get your Fox News, local, whatever, Breitbart to start making claims within minutes of the closing of the vote. And you, not just that, but you have them overestimating the ballots. And so you have to have a semblance of legitimacy. But before you go there, let's be honest in that, the Democrat Party didn't start talking about wokeism and Marxism until late 70s, but the grassroots started 15 years earlier. And even then, in the late 70s, early 80s, those people were outcasts. Those, those Congress critters, those corrupt people in Washington, D.C., they were outcasts. They were social outcasts. They weren't mainstream. They didn't become mainstream probably till 20 years later, late 90s. So you have this movement start in the 60s, and by the late 90s, it's mainstreamed. It takes a while is what I'm saying, but the reality is, no, it was about money. It was always about money and power. And the Democrats thought if they kowtowed to the Marxists that they would somehow get the upper hand. They haven't. Look, one of the things that motivated the Marxists was the Roe versus Wade. It definitely got them riled up and, oh my God, my rights to kill children are being taken away. And so it riled them up. The Democrats and Marxists and the Republicans are complicit in this as well. What America was built on and what it desperately needs is a subclass of humans that don't have the same rights as the rest of us. And now you can make that on religious, because initially it was done on religious ideologies. Then it was done on, ethnic ideologies. And it's just one thing after another. And so now we try to do this for, social economic standards and education, this other stuff. America desperately wants a slave class, a servant/slave class, always has. And the Democrats are still very much pushing for it, but you don't see the Republicans stopping them. Back when the Republicans actually were anti-Democrat, and I'm not saying they were good, there's many negative things that came of the Republican Party, but hey, you go back to the 1860, at least they were willing to shoot people in the face over things like slavery. Now, the Republicans benefit from it. They benefit from illegal aliens that are working in sweatshops and the meat shops and the fields and everything else. They know the Republicans make money hand over fist on this slave class. So don't expect them to stand up and fight for it. They'll just conveniently point out, well, the Democrats were slave class first and consistently. And yes, that's true.
Well, I'll comment on, you said a lot there, Doc, but I'll comment on the Roe versus Wade topic, because I find it a bit fascinating, because it's this issue where two lives are at stake, and we're kind of forced to choose which is more important in some cases. And I think that that the decision coming down through the Supreme Court, I think conservatives and religious types look at it as a bit of a huge win. And okay, fair enough. It was fair enough. We had talked about this before it was ever a thing in the Supreme Court. And I've said before, I didn't think that it needed to go through the Supreme Court, because I thought technology alone was going to cause it to go away. But that's okay. Let's go with the process. It happened. But let's look at what the Supreme Court actually did. All they really did, they didn't say that we're not for killing we're not for killing babies. No one there said that. What they said was they said the process that you used to get there was incorrect. Now, if you go back in Congress and you vote to codify Roe versus Wade, that's a terminology they're using. But if you basically make a law saying that this is a new right, we'll rubber stamp it. Their only problem with it was that the process was incorrect. Now, the good news is, especially from this last election, and even before it, even the Democrats, when they had control of everything, they couldn't agree on how to codify it. They could never come together and get it passed as a law when they were in control of everything. They've had 40 years to do it. Obama's out and he's campaigning on it. Obama, you had control of everything and you couldn't get it done. You didn't even try to do it. It's not so much that they care about a woman's right to choose or the lives of a baby. They like it being a wedge issue for reasons exactly like this. It caused some people to be upset about it and to go vote against Republicans for no other reason than for Roe versus Wade. And we lost, I'm sure, as close as many of these were said to have been, we lost many of those seats because of it. For me, and I'm sure you agree, Doc, I won't speak for anybody else, it was worth it, though. Regardless of who won this House, this Senate, this presidency, if we can bring an end to it, then it's worth the trade-off, because the more time that passes, the farther in the rear view Roe versus Wade becomes, the less of an issue it becomes. And I think that we'll see that in the next few years.
Well, and also, we didn't have a red wave per se, but we're still likely to take Congress, right? We're going to control the power of the purse. And so some of these like left-wing freaking handout stuff is going to be cut off at the knees.
That's right, Brent. We should not hang our heads in shame because the mainstream media told us we were going to win the ball game 40-0, like Texas did with OU recently. But instead, we won the game. It went into double overtime, and we won it through a field goal. A win's a win, brother. We got to take what we can take. We're still winning, right? And we're not all excited about it. We're not all pumped up about it, but we're going to take it. And as long as we can keep winning, as long as we can slow the roll, then that's going to be a victory. Not the outcome that I want. I want a bunch of hardcore constitutionalist conservatives in every single seat in the government. I want them fighting over how conservative they can be and how constitutionalist they can be. But I got to take what I can get right now.
Well, that's the only way they're going to mobilize their base, and they're not obviously very interested in doing that. They're happy with how things are. They're very complacent.
Hey, real quick, can somebody pass Les some baby wipes? Man, his stomach must be acting up pretty significantly.
Hey, so real quick, I think we need to address the elephant in the room, pun intended, and that is Donald Trump. Let me begin by saying I think Trump was the right man for the job in 2016. I think he was treated unfairly by the other side, especially all the impeachment crap and the Russia collusion, et cetera, all that shit. Again, Trump was the right guy for that time. I think guys like Jeb Bush would have been steamrolled by the media. So, but that being said, I think we've evolved past the need for Donald Trump. Recently, he has shown us a side of his personality that I don't think we need right now. I mean, going after DeSantis, who in my opinion could be the next Ronald Reagan in terms of impact on conservatism, Trump is now running for his ego, not his country or us. I have some reservations about the outcome of the 2020 election, yes, but I don't think it was stolen. Was there voter fraud? Sure. I'm sure there was. I think Dinesh D'Souza, the conservative commentarian, he did a movie, 2000 Mules, and it makes a good case that voter fraud actually did occur. And I do think the Marxist side of the Democrats truly believe they can usher in the utopia, so cheating is justified to them. But I truly believe that even if we corrected for fraud in every state, Joe Biden still would have won. I think there was enough, fraud to cover. There wasn't enough fraud to cover, for example, the 11,809 votes Trump needed in Georgia. Maybe a third of that, maybe. My biggest fear now is DeSantis, who is the man we need now, will be undermined by Trump. I think worst case scenario, Trump will run, lose the Republican primary, and then run as an independent, taking votes away from the primary winner in the general election. And I'm afraid we'll have 4 more years of Democrat rule because of that.
If you guys remember when we did the Red Dawn scenario live stream, that was my scenario, that those two ran and Trump lost to DeSantis in the primary and then ran as an independent. And then we ended up with freaking, you guys remember this? Ended up with Biden again? No, I 100% agree. Absolutely. President Trump was the right person for the job. I mean, I voted for Cruz back in that primary, but when he got the nomination, obviously I fell in line and voted for him. And I thought he did a for the most part, good job when he was in office. Honestly, I'm tired of defending him. When you think about leadership and Marine Corps 14 leadership traits and everything I've been taught for over 20 years as a United States Marine, what makes a good leader, he exhibits very few of those qualities in his traits. And I'm sick of making excuses for him. And I'm telling you guys, when he came out the other night after Governor DeSantis essentially sweep Florida, I mean, unbelievable. Areas that were not Republican areas went for Republicans, and just total colossal victory. Ron DeSantis, freaking former naval officer. I mean, just epitome, in my opinion, of what we need on our side. And what does Trump do? Before the midterms are even over, he starts slamming them. I'm like, are you kidding me, dude? Whose side are you on? Yours or the team, the country? So I've lost it. When he was the president, I knew so many Marines that I respected. I had a company commander one time. I'm not going to name any names. I had a company commander who's a very straight arrow Republican. And he's telling me, he's like, I'm gonna vote Biden. I'm like, what are you saying? How could you say that? He's like, well, I think that if Biden wins, he'll govern along down the middle, and we'll end up winning in the midterms, and then we'll end up having a rising star as a Republican. I'm like, dude, listen to what you're saying. This is ridiculous. And just before the election, he ended up texting me saying, okay, I'll vote Trump. But the fact that this guy was willing to do that, it blew my mind. And he was not, by any stretch of the imagination, the only Marine that I knew that towed that line, right? That was like, Trump's an idiot. I can't believe this. And he turns off so many people that would vote in our camp. And I see it. We all see it. We all know it. But, we turn a blind eye to it. And I'm tired of it, guys. We need to get back to a statesman, someone that represents our party, our values, who represents the freaking leadership traits and principles, and attacking each other. Remember, Ronald Reagan said, "Thou shalt not talk ill of another Republican." Right? The freaking midterms weren't even over, and he's already smashing on DeSantis. Give me a break. What the hell is that? So I'm done, guys. I'm in the DeSantis camp.
Well, I will vote for whichever candidate floats to the top, whose views are closest to mine. But I do agree with every single thing you said, Brent. I don't disagree at all. I see DeSantis as a refined Trump, only in that DeSantis's views on most things are in line with mine in terms of being conservative or being Republican or being constitutionalist. But the way that he presents himself has those leadership traits. He's prior military. I believe he was Navy. I believe he was a big wheel in the Navy, big time lawyer, I think. So he's got his shit together, and that he can speak in a respectful way. He can tweet in a nice way and not hurt anybody's feelings, but still convey his message across. I think he's going to be a much more likable guy. And I am like Chad. I am heartbroken to see Trump going after him so early. Now, Trump's been known to dress people down with bad names and make fun of their wives and everything else. And then the next day you see them giving each other hugs, because Trump is all about Trump. But I hate to see the Republican Party split, because here's the thing. If there are people that are Trumpsters, they just want Trump and nothing else and nobody else. And if Trump tells them go vote for DeSantis, they will go a lockstep and vote for DeSantis. But at the same time, if Trump says don't vote for DeSantis, just stay at home and don't vote, they'll do just that, regardless of whether Trump is running or not. So he has the ability to bring the party together or to tear the party apart. And I don't like where it's going right now. If Trump really cared about conservative values and the Republican Party, which I'm not sure that he does, he wasn't always a Republican. He tends to go whichever the way the wind blows. I could see him very well just doing what's good for Trump and not what's good for those of us and the country. So I'm going to keep an eye on it. We're going to see where it goes. I would love to see DeSantis run. I think he's a great candidate. I think he would be an improvement. But as one of the other guys in chat said, I know they're gonna hate to lose him in Florida. Can he like dual job? Can he both run Florida and the United States? I mean, you know what? Step it up, DeSantis. Do both. You know what I mean?
Hey, I want to say one thing, because I just saw a comment that said DeSantis is an insider. Well, where was his insider when he refused to shut down the state of Florida when Trump was calling for 2 weeks that turned into 2 years to stop the spread, right? Trump also banned bump stocks. He also sits there and trumpets the vaccine. Hey, fantastic vaccine. I created it. I practically built it myself. Fantastic. And all this stuff. Where was he? All this crap. Why do people turn a blind eye to all this?
No, 100%.
Okay, in all seriousness, I got to say that was a damn good Trump impression.
Yeah, man, 100%. Trump, I've always labeled him as a 1990s era Democrat. You go look at what he was doing back in the day. He was in with the Clintons and all that. He's a New Yorker. I mean, this guy, the only reason that we're thinking that he might be a Republican is because the left has gone to crazy town, and anyone that was left in the 90s is now considered sane or saner. So, where are you going to go? You're going to go with the guys that ain't crazy town. Like, that's the only place you can go.
We can't talk shit about New York. New York actually delivered. They gave us some seats. Unlike Arizona and, some of the other places. Even California gave us some Republican seats, or is it fixing to anyways?
Okay.
Yeah, those of you
I guess I was talking New York City, but go ahead.
Well,
Well,
yeah,
well,
no,
but no, but-
no. Good points. Those of you from California that went out, got off your butts and voted and didn't give up, you may be the reason that we end up taking one half of Congress. Your counties, your districts in California, because they went red, may very well be the sole reason. Now, listen, guys, I know you can't count and you're out there, you're on your fingers and toes trying to figure out how many votes you got. But when you get it all counted up, you may be the reason, and parts of New York as well, if I'm not mistaken. Manhattan went red. I mean, this is crazy talk. But we have known that the big urban areas of, like, for example, New York or California, those always go hardcore Democrat. But there are many areas outside of that where we've got voters behind the lines that go red, and it may actually make a difference this time. So as much as I hate to see you come over here into my state and muddy up my state, stay where you are, keep voting like you're voting. You're doing a good job. And thank you for what you've done.
Okay, so I'm going to be the negative. I said at the beginning, right before we got on this, I didn't want to be negative Nancy, but I'm winding up being negative Nancy. Here's the deal. Mike hit the nail on the head. Trump is a Democrat. He is a 1990s New York City Democrat. That's how he voted. He voted all the way along their party lines, never really parting with them. And then he wakes up in 2010 something and says, oh, shit. Well, the Democrats have gone farther to the Marxists, and now all the Republicans are crowding my spot because the Republicans are going towards the Marxists. They're just not going as fast. It isn't that Trump infiltrated the Republicans. It's that the Republicans came over to Trump's side. He is a 1990s liberal New York City Democrat, anti-gun. Republicans went there. So when when Bruce Pats says, "Hey, good job, New Yorkers," I mean, I'm inclined to agree with that. But here's why New Yorkers in California, why your votes are being counted. It's because both sides were like, "Oh crap, we didn't think to rig that system." We're pretty sure where New York and in California would go, so we didn't bother to rig it. Oh my God, we're actually counting numbers here. I would say that I'll go you one farther. I think the reason that DeSantis and the Republicans won so decisively in Florida, even the Republicans in Florida are going, wow, we didn't think we could actually win that section. That's because you didn't. It was rigged. See, the Republicans can learn to do this too.
I'll say this, in line with that, maybe. Republicans have got to learn, Brent touched on this, have got to learn to play the game. If you think that that the way you're going to do it is by going back in time 50 years, and you're going to say, only vote on the day of, only use paper ballots, make it more difficult to vote, have to have all these forms of ID, kiss your elections goodbye. That is not the way of the future. You know what the way of the future is? You're going to vote right here. If you can access your bank account and you can log in and see how much money you got in your bank account, for Brent, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it's considered safe, all right? It's considered secure. Then I'm going to tell you, then we can vote on our phones, and that's what people are going to want. People want to be able to order their pizza and not ever get out of their chair, never get off the couch. They want to be able to access their bank account, their phone account, their kids' freaking college fund. They want to do everything right here and not get off their fat ass, because that's what we are. We're Americans. We don't get big by getting out and doing stuff, all right? That's what we are. We want to vote right here. And anybody that's saying anything different, you're going the wrong way. Republicans are going to have to look at what Democrats are doing, and they're going to have to get ahead of it. If I was a Republican candidate, I'd be saying, I want everybody to be able to vote right here by the next election. Make it safe, make it secure, make it so that it's not hacked, and let's rock and roll. Get the government involved and do it. Because I'm telling you, this is going to happen. All right. This is the way
Bruce,
of the future.
Bruce, I was with you every step of the way till that very last bit. What do you mean? No, you're right. It is the way for all the reasons you said. I'm not being facetious. I absolutely agree. And I will say that 10 years ago, I was on the opposite side of this. But after the last two elections, I realized it doesn't matter. It's not like I had this false dichotomy in my head. I had this fake security that somehow if you do it by paper, it can't be corrupted. I don't know why I thought that, because we're looking at this going, wow, there's video of them actually like throwing away all of it. It's just too easily to corrupt. What's so wonderful about the phone is that, yes, it's corrupted. It's pre-rigged. It's known who's going to win before we ever, and Fox News and CNN are going to announce it. But at least it's not annoying anymore. We can go beep, 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 beep. There, I voted. And you didn't vote, and your vote doesn't count, but it's easy. Isn't that that's what's important to America? It's not about values or what's real, what's valuable, or what's good. Nothing like that. It's about creature comfort. It's about creature comfort. That's why we lose, 12, 26, 36% of our income. We're punished for earning income, and we all go, yeah. What was the tax that we went to war over back in 1776? What was it? Like a 2% sales tax or something weird like this? And we got up and shot people in the face for 8 years.
Well, remember, withholding is nothing more than an emergency wartime measure.
That's right. That's right. 1914, where it's just going to help. Hey, man, we're still paying for, just in case anybody's curious, we're still paying for World War I. That's why and it's getting more expensive. World War I's been going on a long time, apparently, so that's why they need 36% of your income. Look, saying we just have to give the people more circus, more peanuts, dangle shiny things in front of them. They're too stupid. So I do agree, Bruce, and I'm not being facetious. Cell phone voting is the way of the future. It absolutely is.
All right, I'm going to jump in. First, let me address the hundred thousands of dollars comment. Bruce, the pickup I drive when we go and film, and tell me that piece of shit that I drive and I have hundreds of $1,000s in the bank. So I'll leave it at that.
I'll admit that you have created a fantastic facade of being of being a man of few means. But I've also seen when you come back from the bank how much the back of that truck is sagging as it goes down the road. It's full of cash and gold.
All right.
You know what I just heard? You know what I just heard here? I just heard Brent like low key telling his audience, hey, if you're trying to get rid of, just go ahead and ship that to me. We're going to see him with like 3 brand new pickups next month.
Anyways, back to the cell phone. So, oh my God, guys. No, absolutely not on the cell phone voting. Give me a break. Are you kidding me? You open that up for so much fraud. Like, okay, let's have these little businesses are like, hey, come to our house and we'll give you $20. You just have to vote in front of us so we know you vote for this left winger. Give me a break, guys. Come on. Go to the polls, show your ID, just like anything else you got to do in life. Verify who the hell you are, and then go to the machine and vote. Like,
but
that
prevents
you do. That
you set up a bank account.
What's that?
Yeah, you set up a bank account that you can access. So I mean, it's got some security to it. But I thought you were going another direction. Where I would have agreed with you, Brent, is if you had said, "Look, we all know it's fraud, but it's fraud by Americans. China is going to control the vote," and that I would say is a very real concern.
So, I think if you go in person, you eliminate the lazies, right? It takes some effort to go vote. Like, there should be some effort involved with voting. Like, if some freaking dude can sit on his couch and watch fucking give me a show, one of those teeny bopper shows. If they can sit there and watch teeny bopper show
90 Day Fiance, go.
And vote for the next president, I'm 100% against that. That's ridiculous.
Let me ask you this. Brent, because I thought about this before the stream. Let me ask you this. Do we as a group want to have to go through fingerprint cards, background checks, federals looking into our having to pay a $200 tax to get a suppressor, a short-barreled rifle, a machine gun, or would we like to go into the local gun store and just pick that up? Because I prefer the latter. Why? Because that's my right. I believe that's a Second Amendment right. And I don't think that my rights, there should be any restrictions placed upon those rights. Now, I'd be a hypocrite if I said you should be able to go into the gun store or order through the mail through Amazon and get a new suppressor, but it's hard to go and vote. Now I have to look at myself. I have to look at myself for that, right? Like because I do agree with you, but I have to be honest with myself. People want things to be easier. And if I'm out there being a proponent to make firearm ownership easier and less government restrictions on firearm ownership, I got to do the same about voting. I have to be fair about it. And like you said, and you might not have meant it this way, but like you said, Republicans, conservatives, whatever we consider ourselves, we've got to get ahead of that game and make sure that the lazy people who agree with us are the ones that are out there voting. Because I'm telling you, this is the way of the future. 20 years from now, we'll come back and revisit this stream, and I guarantee you that we'll be, if not voting by phone, we'll be very close to voting by phone, because it's just what lazy people, it's what when I say lazy people or I say Americans, those are synonymous to me. They're the same thing. Okay. It's just the way that it's going to be. You just wait and see, and you're going to be out there, the crotchety old man, and these guys are still going to be incorrectly calling you a boomer, and you're going to be going, I want my paper ballots and I want my hanging chads, and your vote ain't going to matter.
Okay. Wait. So once again, I'm agreeing with you, but I am curious. Let's take that farther, Bruce. Do you want, this is a loaded question, a 16-year-old convicted felon, rapist, drug dealing, do you want them to be able to order their machine gun off of Amazon?
No, I think prior convictions can be different, and we can discuss those restrictions.
Okay.
But I think you see those.
Yep. But
I think that you can lose your right. If you go to prison, you shouldn't be able to vote, but you shouldn't.
Okay.
You can't go to prison and own a machine gun either.
So how do you earn? I guess that's where I'm going. If we recognize the negative of this, like there's some people who shouldn't have certain rights, then how do we recognize when they do have certain rights? Maybe to follow up on what Brent's saying is, let's go to a Heinlein, Starship Trooper, service has citizenship. Maybe there's something to that. Maybe, okay, voting should be easy, just like buying a gun should be easy. But who gets that right?
We can have that conversation. Look, should a pedophile be allowed to live next to a kindergarten? I know our answer, all of us being fathers and good Americans. Okay, we know that answer, right? But it follows the same lines. There are going to be some restrictions on those rights, right? But I think that those rights, there are limitations, and we can agree on those limitations. No. But I think that they should be fair across the board. If you're a convicted pedophile, guess what? There's 3 things that you don't get to do. You don't get to live by a kindergarten. You don't get to own a machine gun, and your ass don't get to vote. I'll agree to that.
Okay, no. You could have just stopped at live. This is the deal, right? If a person is in our society and is American, well, hell, I'll just say he's allowed to live in our society. He has rights. He has rights that you cannot infringe on, period, because those are rights. If a guy goes to prison and I don't care what his charge is, I don't care what his time is, they say he's green light, good to go, he's able to get released, he should have all his rights restored. He should not be a second-class citizen whatsoever. If we think this guy is not going to be able to integrate back into society with all of his God-given rights, he shouldn't be able to get out. If that means we put him on, freaking isolation island, if that means we behead him, whatever, permanently removed from society. I'll just say that.
Klein for president. You got my vote. I don't disagree with you. Like I said, I'm open to agreeing to these things. You got my vote, man. I don't disagree with you. It just needs to be fair across the board. That's all I'm saying.
Another good point, Bruce, and Mike was going the same direction. There are rights, and many people have written in these rights. We're humans. That's correct. So what are rights and what are privileges? Maybe voting isn't a right. Maybe voting is a privilege.
Correct.
And
And you're absolutely right. How this thing was set up is not everyone was allowed to vote. There was limitations on it. You had to pass certain litmus tests, such as what's your holdings, what's your worth. I mean, this is a republic, not a democracy. As over time, we started opening up voting privileges to more and more people until
Landowner.
the masses assumed we're in a democracy. We're not in a democracy. We're still in a republic. Although, as we go further towards a democracy, it's interesting that we start circling the drain a little faster.
Well, and I believe one of those was landowner, right? You had to own land, and what does that mean? Like, well, you have stock in this country, right? You actually own land. You're not just some fucking, Joe Blow.
Right. You got skin in the game.
There certainly was a time where you had to have skin in the game to be able to vote, but there was also a time where what they want it to be is you need to have skin in the game to be able to own weapons, right? What does an M16 cost today? If you legally procure one, 30 grand. Now, how is that different from being a wealthy landowner? You tell me.
I'm going to say it's because you don't own it, because you're paying property tax on it. That just makes you a renter.
Well, now that's a good point, Klein. Nobody owns anything in this country when it comes to property ownership. It's a socialist thing. You can go out and Doc, you can buy 40 acres. And if you think that's the last payment you're going to make on it, the government will come in, kick your door in, shoot your dog, and take your land from you. You have to continually pay on it, right? So I mean, that's a whole nother discussion for a whole nother time. But anyone who bought land, I mean, what's the show, babe? Yellowstone, right? If you guys watch Yellowstone, I don't know, but I bet your wives do, because there's some apparently there's some hot men on there that get our wives hot and bothered. But the whole point, right, babe, his character's name's Rip. But apparently, if you watch this show, this guy's got this giant freaking property, 100,000 acres that's been in the family forever, and they're constantly struggling to keep the government from taking that land because they have to pay taxes on that land every year. And that plays out. It doesn't matter whether you've got 100,000 acres or whether you got half an acre. You don't pay those property taxes. See what happens.
I just want to point that out because this is a valid point, and that's absolutely wrong. I mean.
Yes, and not only color of one's skin, but the whether one wears pants or skirts as well.
All right, I think we got a little off topic. We were talking about the midterms. We went high and to the right. So not that it wasn't good conversations, but anything else we have to cover? I do want to say that. We have the tendency to just shit on, politicians. There are good politicians out there. Just okay, Doc, you shake your head. What about this young lady right here? What's wrong with her?
How long has she been in office?
Well, I'm just saying, just because you're elected to office doesn't automatically make you the devil. I mean, there's some good individuals, and we need to get those good individuals in those positions.
No, you don't. You don't get into office until you sell your soul.
There's no winning with you.
You're laughing, but it's true. You don't get into office until you sell your soul. And these people come in bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. I want to do a good job. Well, first off, let's be honest, and I'm guilty of this myself, so I know what I'm speaking of. In order to ascend to that level of influence, you have to have just a tinge of narcissism anyway. You have to believe that what you believe, everyone needs to hear. Okay? And what you believe probably needs to be a law. Okay? So that there's a level of narcissism that even propels us into that line of work. But beyond that, you're not allowed into the good old boys club until they got enough dirt on you. And so you do have to sell your soul in order to become a politician. Now, maybe this isn't true, Brent. Maybe at a local level. But by the time you get up to state level, this is an absolute truism. This is as true as the sun coming up tomorrow. And when you get to a state level, hello? Like you're just a meat puppet. So many people have their hands shoved up your ass and mouthing, "Oh, this is what you say next." You're just a meat puppet. And I don't know any exceptions to that. There are some meat puppets I listen to, and I find that their handlers really make them say very interesting things, things that I can agree with. So I'm like, wow, you've got some special interest group that's got their hand up your butt all the way to their elbow. But no, the reality is you have to sell your soul to get into politics.
And I'll say, anyways, the bigger problem is the administrative state. Even if you get your guy in, how effective is he going to be if you got bureaucrats running the show?
Mike, you just hit a problem right there, a big problem with government. Because Doc and I live here in the area, and I'm speaking for Doc here, but he probably knows somebody that works inside the Beltway for the government, for the administration. Did you know when your congressman votes out the other guy from the other party, staff doesn't change? You can have a congressman on their first term, have somebody in their office that has sat in that office at that desk for 40 years. And just like in any business, you know, it's like a body. It does most of the things automatically, reflexively. I think that one of the reforms that definitely has to make, your guy gets voted out, everybody in the office goes, you know, because you can change from one party to the other. All the people in the office do not change, you know. And when the new guy gets there, the staff tells him what he has to do. You know,
term limits.
That's your deep state right there.
Chad, what do you think about government?
Well, I think the 2016 election, I think one of the reasons things went the way they did was because of exactly what you guys are talking about. You know, most presidents, when they get in, they purge the government. Trump really didn't do that. And look at the problems he had. So, you know, he had the opportunity to fire Fauci, and he didn't. And look what happened. Fauci practically ran the damn country for a while. So, you know, I agree. I don't really know how you get in there and get rid of. I mean, like I said, I think last stream, you get the libertarians in for about 16 years and let them rip the federal government apart, and maybe that might be the solution. Maybe libertarianism is the solution to this when the two-party system fails.
Well, if you're actually going to do that, you actually need to go after corporations as well, monopolies, because there's an extension of the administrative state and governance. Large bureaucrats, they love monopolies because they're easy to work with and they do exactly what they're told, and they're easily manipulated. So you actually got to do a lot of antitrust stuff while you're at it. It's not just tearing down because I'll tell you what will happen. The monopolies will just step in that power vacuum and they're okay, we're the administrative state now. And you know, so they're all one and the same. So you got to attack both at the same time.
Ding, ding, ding. Mike just hit the nail on the head. Guys, why did we separate church and state? Why is America so well known for separating church and state? It's because the church had the money. It had the money and it had the influence in Europe. That was the problem. Today, we got rid of the church. We said, hey, that Catholic church, those Protestant church, those Jewish synagogues, they're not going to control our senators and our presidents. And then in 1914, we allowed open the door for corporations, and corporations have ruled ever since. That's our next big thing for humanity, not for the United States. We can't do this alone. For humanity is the separation of money and state. Good luck.
What commercial is that? Doc keeps reminding me of it. Some commercial comes on during the daytime where the guy's like, money, money, money. You guys know what I'm talking about? Maybe it's only in Texas. Sorry, I didn't mean to kill the conversation.
I'm glad we solved that.
Come on,
Well,
Bruce.
I want to go back to the original topic for a minute and something Brent was talking about, basically using the other side's tactics against them. I want to go back to my introduction here. I'm going to go on a little rant here, so I apologize in advance. Bear with me here, but I do think the queer/gender issue is the winning issue for us. We didn't really see it addressed during the midterms. We saw it addressed during the gubernatorial election in Virginia. Look what happened. We saw the parental rights and education bill pass in Florida. Look what happened there. This is the issue that will win elections in the future, because at the heart of it is an attack on the family by the Marxist left. Okay. It also puts the left in a position where they have to defend the grooming or mutilation of young children, which is not a winning issue. I defy anybody to defend that. You just can't. So let me dive into this a little bit, because I think this is extremely important. Okay. According to new several polls over the course of the past year or so, roughly 15% of Gen Z considers themselves in the LGBTQIA plus minus whatever circle. Okay. That's a lot. But is it really because these kids are having some type of gender identity crisis, or is it the newest form of revolutionary identity? Good question. It's obvious something is going on here. New genders are being created daily. What makes the queer agenda most unique is that anyone can become a member by simply declaring themselves a part of it. It is the fastest growing identity group and shows no sign of stopping. Okay. Conservatives need to be making the arguments that this type of stuff is not just people fighting for equality. That's what they want you to think. It's not. Marxism sees the world in a simple binary, oppressor and oppressed. This means it is the goal of the oppressed, the bottom, to become the oppressor and move on top. That's the trans queer agenda, for example. It's very much rooted in Marxist doctrine. There is a whole field of academic study called queer theory. Many of its architects were people like the neo-Marxist Michel Foucault, who wrote The History of Sexuality, other prominent postmodernists / neo-Marxists like Gail Rubin, Judith Butler, Eve Kosofsky. So let me explain this a little bit. So Marx believed a small group of individuals, which he called the bourgeoisie, held special property called capital over the proletariat. This fed into his concept of class warfare. Let's take that theory and modify it in terms of sexuality. Queer theorists believe heterosexuality and the sexual binary, i.e. male-female, are social constructs that allow a special group, those called heteronormative, access to a special property called normalcy, and allow for an unjust hierarchy in which the normies have all the power. In a nutshell, the heterosexuals are oppressing members of the LGBT alphabet mafia by controlling a special property. This property is not capital, as Marx said, but normalcy, which is a social construct in their view. So in Marxist fashion, that system of heteronormacy must be broken down and destroyed. Well, how effective is this? Well, I challenge anyone here to spend a day on TikTok watching trans videos of young kids explaining how they are part of this oppressed community. They're making new genders every day. I think one of the newest ones is called trigender. This person identifies as a man, woman, and non-binary at the same time. This is so obviously rooted in the cognitive dissonance aspect of the Marxist dialect, which essentially maintains that one can hold two opposing viewpoints at the same time. Vladimir Lenin called this development through the unity of opposites, and Mao Zedong directly addressed this concept and its relation to personal identity in his work on contradictions. So why target kids? Because during the early stages of development, they are already confused about their identity. The neo-Marxists believe the hegemony of Western society, particularly the family, stands in the way of communist establishment. And the most basic unit of Western society is the family. Within the family, children make the easiest targets. This is actually more of a Maoist tactic, referring to Maoist targeting of children and propaganda during the Cultural Revolution, so they would turn on their parents. Understanding this and explaining it is difficult. We can't just point this out in political ads and say, vote conservative because the other guys are communist. You have to explain how and why they're communists. We don't need to make America great again. We need to make communism a bad word again. That's what Ron DeSantis essentially did when he declared November 7th, the day before Election Day, a state holiday in Florida focused on remembering the victims of communism. We need to do exactly what the left does to us, like Brent was talking about. One example is labels. They label us fascist, Nazis, racist. We need to label them groomers and stick with it. Run with it. Every political ad we put out should be nothing but school board meetings of parents pointing out the various ways they're trying to sexualize our kids. It worked in Virginia. It worked in Florida. Here in Tennessee, we currently have legislation banning gender-affirming care for minors going through our GOP state legislature, and our GOP governor will surely sign it. This is the issue we needed to see during the midterms, not what happened during the 2020 election. Rant over.
I'll go. Oh, no. Chad's on the money, and I'm going to follow on that. Guys, this is a huge, obviously it's huge because I'm here in Virginia, and it did bring a political party to power here, and it did in Florida, as we've just seen. And Chad is absolutely correct. It leveraged the attacks on the American family, and it exposed them, and people were voted appropriately. So here's the thing, though. You can see fissures even in the LGBTQYR3467 community. You can, and it's if normal, if the normalcy, right, the normative trend of family is the bad guy. Well, there are allies, quote unquote, unintended allies. Let me give you an example. In LGBTQ4, I don't know what it is. It's a Star Trek name. The point is that on those gays are males, homosexuals, who are seen as privileged because they've been accepted by normalcy, right? Normative trends. They've been accepted. They're well educated. They're well situated in corporate America and government and all this other stuff. So they're like, yeah, gays. Only slightly behind the gays are the lesbians, who are championed now by the Norman. And so what's happened is, your queer theorists are saying, hey man, you're not, this is the point of sexual intersectional identity, is I'm not just black, I'm black and I'm a lesbian and I'm in a wheelchair. You see what I'm saying? So my opinion is 3 times that of a lesbian, because I'm a black, handicapped lesbian. So I get 3, you only have 1. My voice is more important than your voice. This is how the Marxists work. Well, if you look at what's going on in the national narrative, that lesbians and homosexual, lesbians and gays, and even even some of the bisexuals are saying, we're rejecting all this. We're rejecting all of this. And it's, again, very, very fascinating and interesting to tell, because they said, look, homosexuals, gays, lesbians, bisexuals, we're all based on a binary. There's men and women. All of us are. We believe there's men and there's women. And it's just our attraction to which ones. That's what makes us gay, lesbian, or bisexual. All this other crap out there is make-believe, and it comes from severe, acute, prolonged depression. Furthermore, you really want to watch and get some good material. Start looking at all the detransitioning stories throughout social media. Heart-wrenching. And these people talk time and time again about betrayal by the medical community, the Hippocratic Oath, the betrayal of these people to say, hey, I see that you have acute prolonged depression, but don't worry, you just take these operations that will mutilate your body, and you'll feel better about yourself. And they talk about profoundly, deeply, emotionally about that betrayal by the medical professionals we're told to trust. It's wicked bad. So I think you're right. If conservatives want to latch on to something, you better latch on to that, because you've got allies. You've got allies in the LGBTQI 4107. You do have them, and they don't even want to be your allies, and they're already your allies. They're admitting, yeah, we're on the same team because we recognize males and females.
Yeah, I'm not sure what impact that's going to have. I know that. Doc, I'm surprised, a little bit shocked you're taking this position, because that we've had Klein helping us test our trigender sex robots, and that's been going very well. We're getting ready to roll that out next year. I'm not sure, you getting this message out, what kind of impact that's going to have our newest product. We thought we would make a little something for everybody, and if you're halfway through and change your mind, it's there for you. But anyway, we'll discuss this after the stream. Okay, guys.
I think, in my defense, that the board of directors was not listening to me when I said that you needed to have skins that could change from one gender to another. And now I'm just, having this out in the open.
Yeah, here's the thing, guys. The reason why I think they push this stuff so hard is because they want to decouple people's minds from base reality. I mean, if you can get someone that doesn't even know what they are, how can they build a foundation of themselves and their lives? Like, where can you go from there until you figure out what you are? So if you got a whole swath of people that are utterly confused as to what is the nature of their existence, like what are they, man, like you could just lead those people around by the nose. You can make them believe anything because they just have no concept of reality, and there's no litmus test that they can hold something against at all. Furthermore, I think like what we were talking about before with what do we do, what's our strategy for moving forward with our governance, it really comes down to what is your faith in institutions. I know my faith in institutions has taken quite the beating with the COVID stuff, with some of these elections that happened. I mean, I find it very hard to move forward in like the status quo, just vote for Team Red type of dynamic. And it's just challenging because that's the easy approach. The other stuff is like how to boil the ocean, and I don't freaking know how to do that.
Right. No, Mike, you raise a good point. We were just saying that politics is is one of those button, who's got the button, right? A shell game, right? It's the shell game. And what I want the voters to do as a politician is to pay attention to the emotional hot button items, right? Or the concepts. I want to talk about gun control and gay marriage, and I want to talk about abortion and and whatever, and marijuana and things like this. Whatever's going to rile them up and get them to vote. First off, to get them to vote at all, and then also to get them to vote for me. Not that they need to vote for me, or not that they need to vote, but there has to be at least a facsimile enough of a number so that I can bribe the local news channel to say that I won. And I think I'm chastising this, and yet at the same time, I'm recognizing that this does work. This does get your grassroots motivated. It's certainly what Chad was going on about, and I think we've seen evidence where this has worked well for conservatives. I won't say Republicans. I don't believe Republicans are conservative. Not at all. Not in the least. The best is that they're slightly left of center. They are slightly liberal of the center line. But nonetheless, yeah, you're right. I guess if you want to empower certain candidates, that's what you would want that candidate to do. I think far more importantly is that you should be homeschooling, that you should be definitely teaching. If you're not taking your kid to a church, to a religious institution, then make sure you are subsidizing that with some kind of moral, ethical teaching. Yeah, I think we have to.
Yeah,
improve
that goes back to. Sorry, I didn't mean to overtalk. But that goes back to what we were talking about before, or I guess I was, of decoupling yourself from these institutions, from trying to create your own systems as best you can and operate in those terms versus having to be so wholly dependent on monopolies and administrative state and bureaucrats and whatever to help determine your existence. I know it's hard. Like, no one's going to go off in the woods and be the mountain man by himself because, oh, by the way, the mountain man actually had to come to town to get salt and ammunition and whatever. So even him, he wasn't fully decoupled from society. So it's task, but I think the best thing he can do is separate, yourself where you can, when you can. And, but if we could get that at a larger scale, then you can have a parallel process. Like you look at the original American Revolution, it wasn't we were all part of the British monarchy and we said, no, we're going to go start our own thing. No, it wasn't that at all. The British monarchy started imposing its will on our existing systems of governance, and we just simply rejected it and said, no, we're good. We got our own system here. It's working fine.
I think the problem with the analogy, though, this is just my view, is that the difference was you had an active number of Americans or colonialists that opposed the oppression that the British were instilling upon them. That's not the case today. I think that most Americans like what they're getting from the government in one form or another. And from the local level all the way up, they continue to vote for it, much to our surprise. But the fact is that they do. I mean, even if someone came out with a poll and said only 13% of Americans support the increase in government size, I would say, God, I can't believe it's that high of a number. But in reality, it's probably well above 50%. Otherwise, we wouldn't see the constant. You guys talked about it in your taxes, and Brent can speak to taxes more than anybody because I can't imagine how much his hundreds of thousands get taxed every year. But these we continue to pay them, right? Every year you go to vote, even on the local level, we want to tax you 1 penny more to pay for this road, to pay for the big thing in Dallas was they want a brand new convention center. Now, they don't use the piece of shit convention center that they've got now. They want to bulldoze that down. They want to move a whole bunch of graves, and they want to build a brand new convention center. What do? They vote for it. Take more of my money, make the government bigger, pour more concrete, make more useless stuff. That's the country that we live in. I don't like it. And I know you guys don't like it, but I think it's the reality, and I'm not sure how we turn that around.
All right, I'm jumping in. I'm tagging in. So how we turn it around. Well, first off, let me address the tax issue. Buddy, I use TurboTax. If I was making hundreds of thousands of dollars, I'd not be doing my own taxes on TurboTax.
Listen, he doesn't have money because he throws it away. He's a very thrifty millionaire.
I'm looking at many demilitarized mortar systems, rocket launchers, and machine guns, and that is the reason why I don't have hundreds of thousands of dollars. All right, back to my point. Okay, circling back, Jen Psaki's term. I want to go back to something Chad said about Gen Z, all right, because Gen Z voted overwhelmingly for the left. How do we win that generation? And I think we're our own worst enemy here because we're pushing these guys, all right, because they're already going to the schools and everything and getting the left-wing indoctrination there. I think we're in good footing when you have these parents uprising at these, school board hearings. But I think we're shooting ourselves in the foot. I've seen countless videos over and over. And Doc, I'm going to even call you out on this too, because I've seen multiple videos on our side of the aisle. Why would anybody join the U.S. military? The U.S. military is going woke. This, that, and the other. Blah, 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 blah. I don't want to serve in Biden's military. Fuck that, blah, blah, blah. Guys, we need men. We need men in this country, okay? My son, I have to kick him off the freaking video game console because he's spending too much time learning to kill his enemy, playing first-person shooters. We need to harness these young minds into making them into future war fighters. Okay. I had to kick him off, but he's interested. He's wanted. That's all he wants to do is go online and freaking kill the enemy, right? On this video game. We need to harness these young men. Their interest is there. When I was a young man, all I wanted to do was go play war. All right. These young minds need to get molded. You get hard in the Marine Corps. Our side has this picture that the U.S. military is this big woke organization. Guys, what happens if Ron DeSantis becomes the next president of the United States in 2 years. Is the U.S. military still this big woke institution? All right. By telling our young men, do not serve in the military. You don't need it. It's a big woke institution. You're pushing the next generation of warfighters out of the way. And we're not making the men to become the next warrior leaders that our society needs. Okay. So we're killing ourselves with this kind of talk. Doc, your response.
Guilty. You're right. I have been doing this. I've been doing this probably for the last 4 or 5 years. And this is something I've never done in One Shepherd or anywhere else I've served. When people come to me and say, men, young women, hey, I'm thinking about serving, I right away start talking to them about, the merits of that choice. Now, not all of them decide to make the leap. That's fine. But I do talk to them about the merits of choice. For the last, 4 years or so, I have been saying, slow your roll. You don't need to join right now. It's not that I say don't join, Brent. It's that I say don't join right now. But I can argue the merits of why I say that, but I also hear what you're saying and I recognize it as true. The military needs good men and women. It needs warriors. And with strong warrior ethos, it needs warrior leaders. And you're absolutely correct that even under Biden, we need this. And the military is under attack. So I should be reaching out to more of them. I should be, and I'll give this some thought. Honestly, I already have been thinking about this. I have a young man right now in One Shepherd who's asking me whether or not he should enlist. And so I need to give this some more thought because I agree with your premise. At the same time, I don't want to send them in. I don't want to send them in blind. I want them to understand that the military is trying to change, and it's trying to change towards Marxism, clearly towards Marxism. But that's a temporary status. Furthermore, I think the bigger question here, Brent, is how do we help these people? Because it's not like they only meet Marxism in college. No, they get that all through their school. Boys are told to shut up, sit down, be quiet, and act, not just act like a good little girl, but to make sure that even as a good little girl, they make sure that the girls get a voice and get to try and get to do all these things too. I'm right now of the opinion that our huge mistake was co-ed education. That the girls learn one way, the boys learn another way. And if that's true, and I don't believe it's true in every case, but I generally do accept that there's some truth there. Boys learn an entire new way. And this is why I say to anybody listening on this, if you have a son, if you have a daughter, you might keep her in the Marxist realm of public school. But if you have a son, for God's sakes, do the right thing. Get this kid out of public school. Get them out. Get them out right now. Get them out tomorrow. They are neutering your son in more ways than one. They're actually attacking his body, his biology. And I don't know if they're doing it willing or knowingly. I seriously doubt it. I don't think the public school knows that the chemicals through the water and through, soy products and stuff like this, but they are actually decreasing his testosterone and sperm count. So this is the end result. And then on top of that, there is this Marxist ideology of men are bad and you need to be good little girls. And so you're doing your son a disservice if they are in public school. Get them out. And then when they turn 14, send them to us. Send them to One Shepherd, and we'll make warrior and warrior. Okay? I know. I hear you, Brent. You've been beating me up on this for several years, and it's not that I don't see the merit of your point. I really do. When
I left active duty and I went to college, right, on the GI Bill, I remember sitting in class, and there was a left-wing professor, ranting on about somebody. I can't remember who it was, but I was a freaking, 22-year-old combat veteran, sergeant of Marines, sitting in that class, and I'm listening to this. And what do you think I did? I didn't sit in the back. No, I was a veteran of the invasion. I was a combat tour Marine. I didn't keep my mouth shut. I spoke up. So what do you think the other students sitting in a class are hearing? They're hearing my point of view, right? When some professor is talking about, Iraq or some other foreign policy thing, or talking about something I've actually experienced, and I'm not going to sit there with my mouth shut. I'm speaking up, right? The other students are hearing this, and they're not just sitting there, muting what I'm saying. They're hearing my point of view. But if we keep our men, if we deter our men from going into military service and getting those experiences, who's going to speak up to these left-wing professors in these colleges? All these future teachers sitting in the room, right? If there's no counter voice to that.
And there's not. Unfortunately, there's not. I'm Roman Catholic. There's no counter voice to the Marxists and when you go to Mass each Sunday. There's no counter voice when you go to catechism. No, they don't counter it. They tell the men the same thing. Sit, shut up, good little girl. So you're right. We need institutions. You know that we have one shepherd, but it's very tiny. It can only handle so many people. I wish the hell we'd see more and more people. We're trying to expand operations. We need more institutions like One Shepherd, though. And scouting, as it is now known, I don't think is meeting the mark either.
Yeah, again, it goes back to the fundamental question. Do we try to save the institutions we got, or do we create new parallel ones?
I did want to comment real quick on Brent's point. I absolutely agree with Brent on this, but I think Doc does have a point about taking your kids out of. I think I'm about to make a point that will reconcile both your point of views. Actually, I think if kids are inoculated at home where it counts, so Doc talking about taking kids out of public schools to wokeism, so they recognize it, they don't buy into it, then they can go out into the world, into institutions such as the military, and function properly. Say, hey, I'm not buying into this shit. I'm just here to, slay bodies and shoot guns and blow shit up. It starts at home. Bottom line, it starts at home.
I think the problem, Chad, of what you're asking for is you're asking for good parenting. And I think maybe in the big umbrella of things that, we've known this, people call it inner city schools, people call it fatherless homes. You can call it whatever you want, but good parenting is on the decline. And that's not to say there's not some good parenting out there. Of course there is, but there's probably less good parenting out there today as a percentage of Americans go as there was 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 200 years ago. What are your thoughts?
I'm going to push back a little bit on that, actually, Bruce, because I think we only learn about the bad ones because it makes a good news story. I think most kids, most people, a majority of people still know how to rear their children, and we're still a center-right country, believe it or not. I know the media doesn't want us to believe that, but we have a country of 330 million people. Okay, most of them live in big cities and stuff like that, suburbs, rural areas, things like that. I think, bottom line, most parents do good. It's the institutions that we have to worry about. Most parents know what they're doing. Most parents do it the right way.
Yeah, I think that's true, that we want to do good. I'll say that. But we also have a situation, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, where they said we've now just passed over statistically the 50 percentile of kids that live in a single parent home. And they are vulnerable. They are vulnerable, far more vulnerable than those that live in a 2-parent home.
There are still plenty of success stories from single parent households, though.
That's true.
You can't discount them all.
And I think the vast majority of single parents want great, wonderful things for their kids, but I'm saying they also don't have the time to be that great parent when they're also the breadwinner. You know what I'm saying? They're gone. And so those kids are raising themselves, and that means that the weight of the Marxist educators it plays more powerful on them. Now, but I don't disagree with your premise, Chad. I think your premise of it starts at home is correct. I think it does start at home.
Yeah, I mean, we're almost at the 15-minute mark. Doc, if you want to finish up your comments, and then I'm going to go around the horn to final comments for everybody.
I'm good. Thanks.
All right, kicking it over to Small Team Supply. You got the con, man. Final comments.
Sorry about that, guys. I guess it just goes back to what I've been saying off and on this whole discussion. You know, it comes back to, I think the best thing personally moving forward is to try to create your own systems and get on your own systems best you can. If that means homeschooling, if that means how you're making your living, how you're reaching people in the world, how you're communicating. You know, it's hard to divorce yourself from all these systems, but do the best you can. Start small and grow from there. You know, I think Brent made an excellent point about maybe some of the institutions we got are worth keeping and worth fighting for. And I think there's definitely some serious sunk cost. A lot of lives, a lot of people put good input in building these things up, but they don't pop up overnight. So there's still a lot of good there. It's just a matter of are we willing to put in the work to save them, to turn them around? And if we can. I hate to say do both because that divides your efforts, but maybe you just got to look at it case by case and see which ones you can save, which ones you have to start anew.
Well, circle back to our topics tonight. I'm going to say we started off with the missile strike into Poland. I'm going to say that's just probably an overshoot, and the press is making hay out of it because they can, and it's something new to talk about. And in the end, it's probably no big deal. As far as the midterm elections go, still out to lunch on this one. I'm not making up my mind here. The most interesting thing I found out here is in 2 elections, they consistently underreported what the red side would do, but this time they massively overreported it. Doesn't make any sense to me. I'm having trouble with Pennsylvania because it doesn't matter if you like Oz or Fetterman. The choice is between a being and a walking vegetable, and people seem to prefer the walking vegetable. So while I think nothing overtly nefarious is going on, there's just a lot of weird stuff going on. And I don't think this midterm election is going to end before the end of the year at this rate.
All right, well, I'll change gears a little bit. I know we've talked quite a bit about the election and the issues that we have with democracy or a constitutional republic in this country, but I'll speak a little bit on Ukraine. Not so much on the missile issue, because I agree with some previous guys that is probably not it's probably going to end up being a bit of a non-issue. But let's not forget that Ukraine has been launching an offensive. They have taken the entire Kherson region. The Russians have retreated out south of the Dnieper. The Ukrainians have crossed the Dnieper in some points. That's a rather huge accomplishment. Everything south of the Dnieper is lowlands. There's actually some desert areas there, which are kind of unique to Ukraine. It's not really that habitable or defensible. And I expect before the freeze gets here, the winter gets here, we will see Ukraine establish lines south of the Dnieper and continue launching attacks towards Crimea. And I'll say that I think that I've got a buddy that's saying that just wait, the Russian attack is on the way. When everything freezes, the Russians are going to choose to send tanks and infantry into Ukraine with the inability to dig in and form defenses because the ground will be frozen, and push back and roll through Ukraine. Okay, I'm like Missouri, the show me state, willing to sit back and see it. But right now we know that Ukraine is on the offensive, and I'll admit, just being a study of history and military history on an amateur level, I am interested in seeing what comes of that. So I will be glad to take my 2 minutes here and speak on the Ukrainian issue and get back a few guys here in a few weeks and see what's actually happened, because the winter is right around the corner.
All right, so and I'll draw it back to the original topic of midterm elections. One thing we didn't discuss is, if I, in the future, if I vote Republican, does my sex robot get a vote? And do they automatically vote Republican? I mean, if I'm dead, it's very clear that I vote Democrat. What happens if my sex robot malfunctions? Anyway, I will agree with Mike Klein on this one. I think that I have very little faith in the American political process. I think I've made that clear tonight, as I've made it on other evenings as well. But that said, you have to be careful about throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And I don't pretend that I have a crystal ball that sees into the future. Well, at least not beyond the scope of sex robots. And you have to look at each institution and say, this is the one that I'm comfortable with. And this is the one, and maybe there are minor changes that I'll make. And so if it makes you feel better to vote, go do that. But for me, the illusion was pulled back only a couple of years ago. And for other people, I know the illusion was pulled back 30 years ago. So I clung desperately to that illusion. It's gone. But I do agree with Mike, and that is that you need to change the institutions or abandon them when they make sense to you. Change what you can, live with what you can, and then abandon those institutions when they no longer make sense to you. And here's the thing, ultimately, imagine if everybody started, or at least the vast majority of us started homeschooling. Let's say 70% of America was homeschooling. There will arise from those ashes a new institution. And the wonderful thing about this is that you'll be one of the holders. You'll be one of the people who says, well, I get to help define what this institution is, what it does, and what its values are. And so I think that that's maybe the big takeaway this evening is, whatever institution, be that elections or political parties or, school and education, be prepared to unplug where you can from institutions and take on more responsibility for yourself and your family. Okay? All right. Thanks.
Well, thank God we finally got Doc to address sex robots. It's been a while. So to the topic at hand, I think Republicans need to fight on winning issues. They didn't. Most of the candidates who brought up the 2020 election and how it was stolen didn't fare well. The 2020 election is over. Let's get over it. Move on. Let's go after the groomers. Get porn out of our schools. Go to your local school board meeting, record it, send it to your local congressman, congresswoman, and demand they put it in a political ad. I think understanding what we're dealing with in the first place is essential. So on that line of thought, I'm going to recommend two things. I've always got to plug a book in Brent's channel. This time's no different. I recommend this book. It's called Cynical Theories by Dr. James Lindsay and Helen Pluckrose. It has a chapter dedicated to queer theory. Get the book, read it, and educate others. Second, go out and check out New Discourses. It's Dr. James Lindsay's YouTube channel /podcast. Lindsay is an expert on wokeism and essentially just reads their literature, the Marxist literature they put out, breaks it down Barney style for the layman. Educate yourself so you can educate others. That's our best weapon.
All right. It's been an interesting conversation. I don't have too much to add to the whole Polish missile strike. There's too much unknown right now. I'm sure we'll hear more in the coming days. Going to our topic, it was kind of let down by the midterm elections. I saw a nice piece by Mark Levin when he talked. He spoke more articulate about it than I could, but he was essentially speaking that the numbers for a big red wave weren't there this election cycle. Now, the next election cycle, where we actually have a president, the numbers are on our side. With that said, though, we absolutely could have taken the Senate. I think if those on the right had been more precise with their money, those in leadership positions that were, delegating that money, I think we could have, if they delegated that money to the right places, such as in Arizona, that Senate race, more could have been done. And I think we could have taken the Senate. So like Les said earlier, nobody does it better than Republicans from snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. So not as fortunate on this midterm as we should have been. However, we did take, or at least are projected to take Congress. So we won a battle. We didn't win both battles, but we won a battle, and now we do have a divided government. Thank God. All right. So now there is some checks and balances within our government, or at least soon to be. So there is a victory there. How do we fix this going forward? Like I stated before, guys, I think it's the wrong approach trying to persuade young men not to go into ranks of the U.S. military, for instance. That's just one of many different things we need to do. We need to expand our voting block, right? Our voting base. We need to counter the left in so many different fronts, and just make strong men. Right, we need to stand on strong leadership principles. Okay, we can't have leaders that don't exemplify our leadership principles anymore. Donald Trump, I'm seeing in the comments, I don't know it's true, I'm assuming it's true, they just announced he's running for re-election. Guys, he lost in the last election. Okay, he needs to be relieved, just like in a battle, in a war. If you have a commander that is not fulfilling their roles and responsibilities, they get relieved. All right, he didn't take us over the finish line. When you fire your campaign manager 1 month before the general election, things aren't going good. Okay, and that guy has every excuse in the book. Anytime he doesn't do something right, it's never his fault. Never takes personal accountability. Have you guys noticed that? If you're a strong Trump reporter, when has that man ever taken personal responsibility for any failure that he's had? Okay, we need to look past them. We need to look to real freaking leaders. Let's look at guys that are winning. All right. Remember when Trump said, "Oh, you're going to get so tired of winning," Well, he didn't win. we suffered some defeats. We need winners. All right. We need people that win. Ron DeSantis, in my opinion, is the future of the Republican Party. And we need to look for leaders out there to take us over the finish line that are actually going to take us the rest of the way. And he's a prime example of that. So that's my 2 cents, guys. We need leadership on our side of the aisle. We need to fight the left in the same tactics that they're using. This early voting, mail voting, all this stuff, all these states where they do that crap, Republicans and people on the right need to be doing those same tactics, because this whole, hey, we're going to win on election day, it's not working. It's not working. It didn't work in 2020. It's not going to work now. It's not going to work in the future. So adjust fire and get good effects on target. Okay. That's how we go forward. My closing comments, unrelated to the topic tonight, guys. We have the gear contest giveaway going on till the end of this month. If you haven't seen that, I got the link in the description box. Be sure to go over there. It's a gear inspection video, just like the last contest we did a few years ago, and phenomenal stuff. We got Doc and Les throwing in prizes on that from their YouTube channels. It's just a phenomenal contest. Be sure to go over there and check it out. I hope to see some of your guys' entries. And then I'm going to be doing the Sear Challenge with Grunt Proof here in the coming days. So I'll be out in the mountains where it's cold as fuck, trying to survive and evade capture. So it's going to be a good time. But that's all I got. Does anybody have any save rounds for tonight?
Yes, I got one.
Oh, here you go.
Let's go.
It's been a minute. So, all right, guys. Well, that was our stream. I appreciate everybody logging on tonight, and the participation in the comments is always a warm welcome. Thanks for watching.